This is Rajaraman from .NET Training Academy. This is a very brand new series about .NET Core. The version that we are going to use in this course is .NET Core 3.0, but this almost suits for other compatible versions. So let's get started. So now let's see the things that we are going to cover throughout the series. First, the .NET Core. .NET Core is basically free, open source and cross-platform framework which is created by Microsoft. And it is used in almost everything like developing games, web apps, mobile apps, IoT, machine learning, artificial intelligence, deep learning, and so on. So we are not going to cover everything, but we definitely going to cover the essentials of .NET Core, like basics of C#, because C# is the official language of .NET, and the object-oriented programming concepts in C#, then advanced C# like delegates, generic, entity framework, links, those kind of things. And we're also going to deal with database kind of things like SQL Server and cloud. So the next question is, who's this course is for? This course is for almost everyone. If you are a beginner, you don't know anything about programming, yes, if this course is for you. If you are already familiar with other programming languages like PHP, Python, Java, you're going to try the .NET, yes, obviously this is for you. And if you are from a .NET but you haven't used .NET Core, and obviously this course is for you. So let's get started. And this question is for the complete beginners. They might don't understand that we have talked until now, right? So the first question that they would ask is, what the hell is that programming means? So the basic answer in the internet is, it is a set of instructions. So let's see very deeply how this thing works. So basically, programming is the communication tool between us and the computer. So let's see how does this thing works. So basically, we write our source code in a file, and we have a compiler and then a system, computer system. When we try to run our code, the compiler compiles our source code, and then it will show the output as we expected. So next question that you might ask is, what is the purpose of compiler, whereas programming language is the tool to communicate to the computer? The reason is, computer didn't understand programming either. Computer can only understand this guy, binary, which is 0 and 1, the combinations of zeros and ones. So we cannot write these difficult things. So people created something called programming, which is somewhat relative to English language that we can pick up. We are coding using the programming language, which is relatively easy for many of the human beings, and the compiler translates this programming language into this machine understandable code. So that's how the complete programming stuff works. So now let's dive deeper in writing this code. Here I assume you guys already installed .NET Core 3 and Visual Studio. If you didn't, please check the description that I have a link on my blog. You can see that, how to install those kind of things, and you can come back here later. So create a folder over here, right click, folder, and basic.net core. Okay, let's open this guy right here, double click to open, and press shift and right click, open PowerShell over here. So the first thing that we are going to do is to check whether .NET is installed in your machine. So for that, you have to use the command .NET - version. Okay, the next thing is, we are going to install the interactive shell. And to do that, we have to use the command .NET tool install -g, which means global, and we are going to install this particular tool globally in our system, which will be available in any directory that we are willing to use. So just click, and in my case it's already installed. So this command will compatible to all the versions, compatible to all the platforms like Mac as well as the Linux. So the next thing is, we are going to use the command .NET -script, and it will open up the shell, and here you can make use of this interactive shell just like this, and you can also do some other operations like this. Open up the Visual Studio 2019, and continue without code. And here you're having Vue. In other windows, you have C# interactive. If you're not from Windows, or if you're not using Visual Studio, you can stick with this PowerShell itself, because both the things that I'm going to do here is same. So the first thing in programming, when it comes to programming, we need to concentrate in one thing, which is the basic functionality of a computer: input and output. So let's try to print something, which means the output of a data. So for that, we have to use the class. Which is called console. We will talk about class and methods later in this series, but now you just understand this command is particularly used to print a data. .WriteLine and hello, and inside the double quotes you have to use the command, and you can type whatever that you want, like hello .NET Training Academy, just like that. A little bit of typo here, and semicolon. And what it will do, it will output the text that we have written inside that particular basis. So it is exactly same over here. So if we copy this guy and paste it over there, and it will return the same result. That's fine. So if you are from Mac or Linux, you can stick with this guy, and if you are from Windows, you just go ahead with this guy. So we learned about printing a data, which means output. So if you wanted to get an input, and due to some technical issue in console.readline is not working in Visual Studio, so let's stick with this thing, which means the Visual Studio PowerShell. So we can practice from here itself. So what I'm going to do is to type the console readline over here. So here the cursor is waiting for us to type anything. That is the input that we are talking about. It is waiting for the input from the user. So here we can type any input that we want. Hey, I am DNA, which means .NET Academy. So here it is. So not only this thing, we can get input of any data. Like basically we will track a lot of data in our day-to-day life, like our weight and our food calories and our driving speed and tasks and a lot of things that we track in our day-to-day life. So when it comes to tracking of data, we need to store that particular data in some container. So the very basic form of container in programming language is called variable. Variable is the thing which helps to store any kind of data. Like for example, if you wanted to store a high game score of a particular user, and we can also store the level of that particular user, and we can also store the high score, those kind of things. So what are the things that we are trying to store, which can be stored using variable? So here, to do that, we are going to create a variable. So variable, that we have to use the keyword called var, which is a keyword which helps to declare a variable. So then we have to type the name of the variable. In here we have to choose the name such like weight. So it may be weight of ourselves or some kind of name. You can make use of name in whatever that you want, but here so the next we have to use the equal to for assignment, like any number that you wanted to type. So here 76 is the value which is going to assign in the container or a variable which is named as a weight. Sounds great, right? So that is the basic syntax and how we have to work with a variable. So then click semicolon and it will store that particular weight. So let's see that. Let's check that if it is stored properly. So for that I'm going to use the console.WriteLine command, which is basically used to print the output. So here I'm going to write this particular weight guy over here. So yes, this is the variable name, and using this variable name we are going to identify this variable, and thereby we can get the value of that particular variable. So here it is also called as an identifier. So let's return it will give us the exact output as we expected, which is 76. So we can also perform a lot of things using variables. Before that, there is some restrictions on using variables. I mean variable name. So you cannot place any symbols in a variables like these kind of symbols. The only symbol which is allowed in variable is underscore. And you can use numbers also in variable, but you cannot use the number before the variable name. What you can do is you can use the number after the word, like after the letters. So these are all the constraints of variable. But there is another thing called conventions. We will talk about the conventions and style guides later in this course. So here, this is the basic form of how to use a variable. So now, let's just work on getting an input from the user and storing that value to the particular, getting an input from the user and storing it in a variable. Okay, let's move this thing a little bit interesting, like var name, which is equal to console dot readline and semicolon. Whereas we already saw that here the console.readline commands prompt us to enter some data. So what it will do is this particular command will return whatever the line that we are typing in this area, and it will be assigned and stored in this particular variable. So let's check that out. So here it is prompting us to type something. So here in my case I'm Rajaraman. So if we try to print that guy, console.writeline and name, here it is. So you might have questions. What are the type of data that you can store in a variable? Like you can store a variable, you can store text, and you can store numbers, and you can store real numbers, and you can store boolean like true or false, and there's a lot of things over here to store. For example, let's check all of this thing. Let's try to enter a number. Var number is equal to 89, and you can print that particular guy over here, which is number, which is 89. And you can also store a text, which is equal to hey DNA, welcome to .NET Core. So this guy right here is called string. Basically, it is a string. String is a data type which is used to store a sequence of characters. Here you can see that here we are having a sequence of characters. Basically, string is a text. You can use any kinds of letters, alphabets, and numbers, and some sort of symbols inside the double quotes. But the constraint is you have to use the double quotes before and after. So you have to use the double quote and you have to wrap that around the text that you are typing. Okay. So if you try to print this thing, you have to use this thing. Here it is. Everything is working fine. And you can also use some decimal value over here, like 78.98989, like that. And here we are getting some error. Actually, the error is the decimal is the keyword which is predefined in the C# language. So another concern that you have to remember is you should not use any of the keywords from C#. Okay, so just remember that. So for that you have to use the keyword. So you have to choose any of the languages like this. So you can choose any of the letters just like this, 98.89, and here it is. It will show us the output. So let's just try to print this thing. 98.80. We have to type real name over here. That's a typo. I have to use the number over there. So that's fine. So here's the exact output that we expected. So this is how we can use decimal values, numbers, strings, those kind of things. And we can also use the boolean value, like boolean guy is equal to true semicolon, and you can notice that the semicolon over here. So the semicolon is an essential thing in programming language like C#. So you have to use the semicolon. The semicolon which indicates the termination or the ending of this particular line. We are telling the computer that this line is over, so you can concentrate on the next line, like that. That's cool. Okay, fine. So the next thing is you are going to use. So the next thing is variable is case sensitive. For example, you just for example, you created a variable name which is an identifier called booleangui. So what if I just change this thing, this letter to the capital? It won't work because it is telling that B, the capital Boolean guy, does not exist in the current context. So what basically happens is the computer tries to find, is there any identifier which is stored in the it will check for any identifier or a variable which is stored in the address, and if it's not found, it will throw this error like it didn't available in the current context, like that. So we have to make sure to concentrate on case sensitivity. So that's the whole point. And when it comes to C#, there is no. The next thing is whitespace. So you don't need to worry about the whitespace thing over here, because C# is a computer can automatically reject these kind of whitespace while running. While compiling. Let's try to demonstrate this. Boolean guy semicolon. No problem. It's working fine, right? So the next thing is we are using the variable keyword called var. But in C# there is a completely other way of doing it, and this way of doing the thing is called implicit variable. Here we are not defining or explicitly telling that any data type of a particular variable, right? So what happens is we are giving some value in the left hand side, and according to that value the var keyword automatically understands the type of the data. So there is another option which is called explicit type, where you can make use of where you have to explicitly say the data type name, like integer a is equal to 98. Integer a is equal to 95, and integer b is equal to 67, like this. And you have to use the string name is equal to Raja. I'll put semicolon over here, and like this you can make use of double, which is really a huge number that you can use. And you can also use the long, which is the higher version of the. So each and every data type has some value limitation over here, just like I am displaying. So each and every data type has its size limitation of how much data, how much memory, or how much numbers that we have to store, like that. Okay, so we talked about explicit variable and implicit variable, right? So what is the difference between the implicit and explicit variable? And is there any pros and cons of using that? So basically both has its own pros and cons. For example, in integer we can first declare a variable like this, a comma b comma c, and later we can assign value for that, just like that. But when it comes to implicit variable, we cannot do steps like that. So it is saying implicitly typed variables must be initialized. The reason is, if we are using implicit variable, it can only understand the type of this data by knowing its value, right? So only if we tell the value to the variable, then only it can able to recognize the type of the data. So this is the correct form of using implicit variable. You cannot use these kind of things like declaring and then initializing kind of stuffs. So this is somewhat difficulty with the implicit variable. But the actual thing is, when it comes to implicit variable, you don't need to care about the type of data. For example, if you wanted to use the explicit variable, we have to make sure to type the correct data type like long or int or float or double or string or those kind of data types. But the problem is you cannot know the exact data type at every point, right? So and also you cannot and also someone didn't feel good on using explicit type data types. So that is somewhat a disadvantage when it comes to explicit data type. You don't need to worry about the data type in implicit. So this is the implicit and explicit data type. You can use whatever you want. It's totally up to you. Both the steps, the functionality works same. And the next thing is operators. Operators. And the next thing is operators. So this is a very basic math thing. So you might be heard about these things like arithmetic operators, relational operators, logical operators, assignment operators. So when it comes to arithmetic operators, you have operators like plus, minus, multiplication, division, modulus, increment, decrement. And when it comes to relational operators, double equal to, which mean it will check the equal to between the left hand side and right hand side, and not equal to, and less than, greater than, lesser than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and logical operators like and, or, not. And there is also assignment operators. I just talked about the assignment operator before when we are trying to assign a variable, so it will work along that. And we are also having multiple types of assignment operator. We will see those kind of things very soon. And other operators like size of, type of, and pointer operator and ternary operator, is and as. We are going to check all of these operators right now. So let's go to this PowerShell. So if you are seeing the PowerShell, so we can work with the arithmetic operators like 9 plus 8, 67 minus 78, and 8 into 9, and 334 divided by 6, and 99 modulus 98 modulus of 6. So these are all the things that you can play around, but you can make use of a variable to do these kind of things. So here I can use var a is equal to something like var number 1 is equal to 88, and var number 2 is equal to 99, right? So what you can do is we can use another variable like number 3. You can add the number 1 plus number 2 over here, because the value, because you can, I already told you, this value which is assigned in the variable num1, and this particular variable contains the value 88 and this contains 99. So when we call this particular identifier, this value is replaced over here like 88 and 99 underneath the computer. So after return, if we try to print that particular guy num3, we get the exact results of addition of these two guys, num1 and num2, which is 187. Perfect. So another thing that you guys have to notice, when you are giving a number, it should be relative, or it should be meaningful. Like, so let's take a look at calculating BMI, which is body mass index of a particular human. So for that, I'm going to get the height, whereas here in this case the height of mine is 1.83, 85, and whereas weight is 85. So the formula to create formula to check the body mass index is weight divided by height square. So let's check that out. So we have to create a variable name called BMI. So this is what I'm trying to convey. You have to give the variable name meaningful. Here height is very meaningful, weight is meaningful, as well as you can also get this stuff very meaningful like BMI value. So all you can do is to use the formula like weight divided by height square. which means height into height, which is the double the height, and put the semicolon, console.writeLine, and type BMI/value here. So here it's not working as we expected. The reason is basically the computer works, the calculations and the operations of a computer works in a manner of BODMAS, which is called BODMAS. So which is basically brackets of division, multiplication, addition and subtraction. So when it comes over here, it will divide the weight divided by height, and then only it will multiply with the height. That's what the answer that we expected to do. Okay, so we have to create another variable. So in that, what we have to do is to height value, height squared is equal to height into height. So here, let's type this guy right here, height squared, so which is 3.4225. Okay, now we can, so here we can make use of that operation. So like a BMI value, and you don't need to, once the variable is declared, and the next time if you wanted to make use of it, if you wanted to reassign some value, you don't need to use the keyword var once it is declared. The reason is, in the name itself, it is having the term called variable. So it can vary the value as much as we give. For example, here as per the operation, it will store the value as 85, and we are trying to override this particular value. It will also accept this particular value itself. So let's check that out. Weight divided by height squared, semicolon. If we now try to check the particular thing, BMI-value, here's the 24.5. So 24.5 is overweight. So it seems like I'm overweight. I need to do some exercise. So this is how we just created a BMI calculation. It is pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and you can also do some kind of things. So if this particular value gets incremented by 2, then the BMI value of mine is very high weight, like obese. So for example, we can do that guy just like this guy. If we wanted to increment this particular value, we can. If you wanted to increment this value by 1, we can use the increment operator like plus plus. So let's type and see, and so the right line BMI-value. So here it's just incremented, right? So the difference between there's something called post increment and pre increment. So let's check that out. So here I'm trying to use the post increment. So if we see the output, it's not incremented. The reason is we are just printing this value over here, and the increment stuff will happen, but it will not show over here, because that's the point of post increment. So if we try to use pre-increment, the first thing is we are incrementing the 1 with the binary BMI value, and then only we are printing. So it will show 27 because it's already incremented by 1. Now it is also incremented by 1. So totally 27. So this thing is, which is very equal to BMI-value is equal to BMI value plus 1. Okay. So this is the shorthand. This is not the shorthand. This is the shorthand of this particular expression. So before that, we have to talk about the expression. So I hope you already learned about the expression in math class itself. The expression is something like operand 1 and an operator and operand 2, which is equal to value. Just like here, we are having operand 1 and operand 2, and we are getting a value over here, which is 16, right? So this is the expression, and this particular thing, the whole thing, is called a statement. So statement is the combination of expressions and methods calling those kind of things. So let's. The next thing is, not only we can increment just like this, we can also increment in a way like this. BMI is equal to BMI. So first, let's just take the BMI value for now. Here it is 27. Now BMI value is equal to BMI value plus 2. Okay, so let's check the BMI value now. It's 30. Not only plus, you can also use multiplication, division, whatever that you want. So here it is, it's the multiplication of 3. And the next thing is you can perform some Boolean operations. Like, for example, we just saw about the relational operators, right? So we can make use of it, like 8 is greater than 7. Like 8 is greater than 7. True, because 8 is greater than 7. 87 is less than 90. Yes, it is true. And we can also change that 87 is greater than 90. It is false. And we can also make use of the true or false kind of things. And we can also make use of the logical operators, like 8 is greater than 9, or 8 is less than 9. So here, how this expression is evaluated is, first it will check for this particular guy whether 8 is greater than 9, which is false, and it will also check this one, 8 is less than 9, which is true. So false, true. When it comes to OR, either any one guy is true, it will set that as true. Yes, it is. So we can do the same operation with AND, which is false. The reason is, here it is false and here it is true. When it comes to AND, both the sides should be true. So that's the whole point. And let's check 8 is not equal to 9. Yes, it's true, because 8 is not equal to 9. We can also do something like this. Not, we can put not over here. We can check 8 is less than 8. Sorry, 9 is greater than 8, and 89 is less than 77. So here, this thing will become true, and this thing also become true, but in the exterior we are putting this not, which means whatever the result that coming over here by this expression, it is going to be the opposite of that particular thing. So let's type, because it will return the true inside of this, and the opposite of true, which is not, is false. So this is how you can perform some expressions. So here, this is for the first part of this video, and I have attached a link below where you can find the cheat sheet, and also in that particular cheat sheet you have exercises, lot of exercises, so you can practice that. So so that's it for this video. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, and please share this video as much as you can, because that helps me to do a lot of things for you guys. So everything over here that I'm posting is completely for free, so please help us to make good and quality kind of things. So that's it. Thank you.